Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel. Today, we will learn about the explosive Friday, December 5th episode that promises heartbreak, chaos, and unexpected alliances that will leave Port Charles reeling. From emotional meltdowns at the Brown Dog Bar to a literal canine invasion at Sonny Corinthos estate, this episode is packed with drama that fans absolutely cannot miss. Britt and Cody's unexpected reunion. The Brown Dog Bar becomes the setting for an emotionally charged reunion between two wounded souls desperately seeking solace from their respective troubles. Dr. Britt Westburn, looking particularly vulnerable and disheveled compared to her usual polished appearance, has planted herself at the bar with clear intentions of drowning her sorrows in whatever the bartender keeps pouring. Her mascara threatens to run, her usual confident demeanor has crumbled, and she's nursing what appears to be her third or fourth drink of the evening when a familiar face slides onto the bar stool beside her. Cody Bell, equally troubled and seeking his own form of liquid therapy, recognizes his drinking companion immediately. The atmosphere between them crackles with unresolved tension and shared pain as they lock eyes in mutual recognition of kindred spirits having terrible nights. Despite their complicated history, there's an undeniable connection forming in this moment of shared vulnerability. Britt, with a sardonic smile that doesn't quite reach her reddened eyes, breaks the ice with a proposition that could lead anywhere. Looks like we're just going to have to cheer each other up. The chemistry between these two damaged individuals is palpable and impossible to ignore. Viewers will remember their unconventional first meeting when Cody literally parachuted into Britt's life, crash landing directly into the Metro court pool where she happened to be relaxing. That initial spark of romance quickly fizzled out when Britt discovered his true ulterior motive. He was pursuing the legendary Ice Princess necklace that was in her possession at the time, not her heart. The betrayal had stung deeply, leaving scars that never fully healed. But now, months later, with both of them nursing fresh wounds and desperately seeking comfort, that old attraction seems to be reigniting under very different circumstances. The question burning in everyone's mind is whether their mutual cheering up will remain innocent commiseration over cocktails, or whether the alcohol and emotional vulnerability will lead them down a more intimate path that could complicate both their lives even further. Jason's wisdom for Spinelli. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit corner booth that could be at the Brown Dog or perhaps another equally atmospheric establishment in Port Charles, Jason Morgan sits across from his longtime friend and tech genius Damian Spinelli. The lighting is moody and dark, casting dramatic shadows across their serious faces as they engage in what appears to be a deeply philosophical conversation about matters of the heart. Jason, ever the stoic voice of reason and experience, leans forward with that characteristic intensity that has guided so many through their darkest hours. Spinelli looks particularly anxious and conflicted, his usual verbose eloquence reduced to nervous fidgeting and worried glances. He's clearly wrestling with a situation that has him tied up in emotional knots, most likely concerning the complicated triangle involving Maxie Jones and Nathan West. Jason, recognizing the familiar patterns of romantic turmoil that have plagued so many in their circle, offers sage advice born from his own tumultuous experiences. You have to focus on that third outcome, he tells Spinelli with quiet conviction, suggesting there might be an alternative path beyond the binary options Spinelli has been obsessing over. The third outcome Jason references seems to relate directly to Maxie's uncertain future. She remains in a coma, her fate hanging in the balance, and Spinelli is torturing himself with worst-case scenarios. If she wakes up and returns to Port Charles, will they be able to rekindle what they once had? Will she remember the depth of their connection, the years they spent together, the child they share? Or will she gravitate back toward Nathan West, the man who captured her heart more recently? Jason's wisdom suggests that Spinelli is missing a crucial possibility. Perhaps the outcome won't be determined by Maxie's choice alone, but by Spinelli's own actions and mindset moving forward. Canine chaos at Sonny's mansion. The scene at Sonny Corinthos' usually immaculate an orderly mansion has descended into absolute bedlam of the four-leg variety. What started as a quiet evening with Rick Lansing, Sonny, and young Rocco Falconeri gathered in the spacious living room has transformed into complete and utter chaos when Joe Palmieri and Emma Scorpio Drake burst through the front door following their unauthorized rescue mission. The teenagers are barely visible behind the flood of canine bodies surging into Sonny's home. At least a dozen laboratory dogs of various breeds and sizes, all barking, panting, and excitedly exploring their new surroundings. Among them are two dogs that bear an uncanny resemblance to the late Outback, Sonny's beloved former pet, their presence adding an eerie element to the already surreal situation. Another dog among the rescued pack looks remarkably similar to Foster, the cherished childhood companion of Lucky Spencer, making the scene even more emotionally charged with callbacks to Port Charles history. These animals were being held in the secret laboratory belonging to the late Professor Henry Dalton, subjected to who knows what kind of experiments and living conditions. Joe and Emma, driven by youthful idealism and compassion, couldn't leave them to an uncertain fate. But their heroic intentions have created a legal nightmare that sends Rick Lansing into an absolute panic attack. Rick's face turns an alarming shade of red as he processes the magnitude of what these kids have done. His legal mind immediately catalogs every statute violated, every law broken, every potential consequence. He erupts at Joe and Emma, his voice rising to a near shout that cuts through the cacophony of barking dogs. "You've just made me an accomplice to every law you broke." His hands gesture wildly as he paces, envisioning his legal career going up in flames because of this well-intentioned but incredibly illegal rescue operation. The situation becomes even more concerning when Rick learns the circumstances of how they located Dalton's secret facility. Emma found a mysterious note slipped under her door, providing the exact location and access codes, but she has absolutely no idea who left it for her. The anonymous tip reeks of a setup, potentially a trap designed to ensnare anyone who took the bait. Rick points this out with increasing agitation, emphasizing how incredibly lucky they are that it wasn't a deadly ambush orchestrated by Dalton's associates or rivals. The dogs continue wreaking havoc throughout Sonny's home, oblivious to the legal firestorm their rescue has ignited. Alexis and Molly's difficult victory. In the professional confines of Alexis Davis' law office, mother and daughter find themselves on opposite emotional wavelengths regarding what appears to be a significant case development. The office feels heavy with tension despite the late hour. Legal briefs scattered across Alexis' desk alongside cold coffee cups that testify to the long hours they've been putting in. Molly Lansing Davis looks absolutely devastated, her eyes glistening with unshed tears threatening to spill down her cheeks at any moment. Her face reflects deep emotional pain that goes beyond mere professional disappointment. This case has clearly touched something personal and raw within her. As an assistant district attorney, Molly has learned to maintain professional distance, but some situations cut too close to home. Alexis, drawing on decades of experience navigating the gray areas of legal victories, attempts to inject some optimism into the moment. "If that's a win, I'll take it," she declares, though her tone suggests she fully understands why her daughter feels so conflicted. This appears to be one of those Pyrrhic victories where the legal outcome technically favors their position, but the human cost makes celebration impossible. The case likely involves Curtis Ashford, who has recently become a suspect in the shooting of Drew Kane, a development that has Molly particularly distraught given her history with the Ashford family. Molly's years-long domestic partnership with TJ Ashford created deep bonds with his entire family. Curtis wasn't just TJ's stepfather. When he was married to Jordan Ashford, he became a father figure to Molly as well, someone she respected and cared for deeply. Seeing him now branded as a potential criminal, possibly facing serious charges, tears at her heart even as her professional obligations require her to remain objective. Laura's unwanted visitor at the elegant condo shared by Kevin and Laura Collins. Laura has barely had time to process her husband's departure for General Hospital, He rushed out to attend to a patient in crisis. When an authoritative knock echoes through the space, she approaches the door with a mixture of resignation and steely determination, her posture straightening as she prepares for the confrontation she's been anticipating. When she opens the door, her expression confirms that the visitor, while unwanted, is not unexpected. "I was wondering when you'd show up," she says with pointed calm, her mayoral authority evident in every syllable, despite being on her home turf rather than in her office. The visitor is almost certainly Jen Sidwell, a powerful and dangerous man who has been wielding his considerable influence behind the scenes to orchestrate events in Port Charles. Both Laura and Sonny have independently reached the same conclusion, that Sidwell engineered the framed job pinning Professor Dalton's murder on an innocent party, manipulating evidence and witnesses to serve his own mysterious agenda. Laura refuses to be intimidated on her own doorstep. She meets his gaze directly, her eyes hard as steel, and demands answers with the full force of her personality. "Tell me what you want." The confrontation promises to reveal crucial information about Sidwell's true motives and the extent of his plans for Port Charles. Laura stands as one of the few people with both the courage and the political power to challenge him directly, making this face-off one of the most significant moments of the episode. NEXT, we will dive into Willow's shocking decision to marry Drew and the desperate survival strategy hiding underneath that romantic facade. This is not your typical Port Charles love story. It is a calculated move by a mother who feels the walls closing in from every direction. A wedding that felt wrong. On the surface, Willow and Drew's ceremony had all the trappings of a classic soap wedding: soft lighting, carefully arranged flowers, and a room staged to convince everyone that hope was in the air. Yet emotionally, the atmosphere was heavy, as if every vow was weighed down by secrets and unspoken fear instead of joy. Fans watching from home could sense that this was less a celebration and more a carefully choreographed performance, where the bride's smile never quite reached her eyes. Willow choosing a lifeline. Inside Willow's mind, this marriage was never about butterflies, soulmates, or happily ever after. It was about survival in the coldest, most practical sense. She saw Drew not as a romantic fantasy, but as a life raft that might keep her from drowning legally, emotionally, and as a mother who refuses to lose her children. By accepting his proposal, Willow is grabbing onto the one structure in her collapsing world that seemed capable of keeping her out of prison and closer to Wiley and Amelia, even if it meant chaining herself to a future she did not truly want. A bride whose heart is elsewhere. What makes this twist so brutal is that Willow walks down the aisle fully aware she does not love Drew the way a bride should love her groom. Every step she takes in that dress is a negotiation with her own conscience, choosing safety over passion, strategy over honesty, and courtroom optics over emotional truth. The dissonance is so strong that even casual observers in Port Charles can sense that this is not a union built on chemistry, but on fear and calculation, with Willow silently promising herself that her children's security is worth the personal sacrifice. Nina sees through the strategy. Nina's confrontation with Willow cuts straight to the heart of the storyline, because Nina voices what viewers are already thinking. This is a marriage of convenience dressed up as a love story. When Nina challenges Willow about not loving Drew, Willow's answer is essentially an admission that the wedding is a move on a chessboard, a way to step into court flanked by a powerful congressman instead of standing alone. In that moment, Willow stops pretending, at least to herself, and acknowledges that she is playing a long game where Mrs. Drew Kane is a legal shield first and a romantic title second. The legal storm closing in. From Willow's perspective, the looming trial is like a tidal wave, and she believes a jury will see nuance and humanity that a single judge might ignore. Her entire plan depends on clearing her name as Drew's shooter before the custody hearing, because she knows any conviction will be used as a weapon against her when it comes to Wiley and Amelia. In her mind, Drew's political clout, public image, and resources are not luxuries, they are the only realistic tools she has left to tilt the scales of justice even slightly in her favor. motherhood as the driving force. At the core of every choice Willow makes is the terror of losing her children forever, a fear that is more visceral than prison bars or public shame. She can live with a loveless marriage, with whispers behind her back. Even with sharing a home with a man she does not truly want, what she cannot live with is the image of Wiley and Amelia being raised without her. Every time she says "I do," every time she signs a paper, she is really saying, "I will do anything to remain their mother in more than name only." The weight of no return. What makes this marriage especially tragic is that Willow recognizes there is no graceful exit once she steps over this line. The moment she agrees to be Drew's wife for show, she understands that backing out would not only humiliate him publicly, but also undermine the entire legal narrative she is trying to construct. So even with doubts clawing at her, she steels herself with the thought that the train has already left the station, and any hesitation now could cost her the very future she is trying to protect. Drew's power and public image. Drew, as a high-profile congressman, brings more than just emotional support. He brings status, influence, and the appearance of stability that judges and juries subconsciously respond to. In Port Charles, where powerful families and public perception have always mattered, aligning herself with a respected politician gives Willow a veneer of respectability she desperately needs while under suspicion. General Hospital has long thrived on storylines where political clout, hospital corridors, and courtroom drama intersect in the fictional city of Port Charles, making this kind of strategic marriage feel right at home in the show's universe. A price paid in silence. Underneath the lace and legal maneuvering, Willow's sacrifice is quietly devastating because she is agreeing to build a life with a man she never envisioned as her forever. She knows there will be mornings when she looks across the room at Drew and remembers that this was a bargain, not a dream, and that the cost of her freedom is sharing every ordinary day with someone chosen for safety rather than love. Yet she accepts that emotional numbness as part of the deal, convinced that if the outcome is holding her children in her arms without supervised visits or court orders, the emptiness is a price she can live with, survival instead of happily ever after. In the end, this storyline is not about Willow finding a soulmate or rekindling some epic romance. It is about a woman cornered by the justice system, her mistakes, and her enemies, choosing the one move that might keep her world from shattering completely. She stands beside Drew not because he is the love of her life, but because he is the safest bet in a dangerous game where losing means losing her children, her freedom, and her identity. For Willow, marriage is no longer a promise of forever. It is a calculated contract with survival, and she is willing to live with the consequences as long as it brings her one step closer to holding Wiley and Amelia without fear. Next, we will dive into Dante's explosive Thanksgiving ultimatum to Rocco, the dangerous mess with Joe and Emma, and the political storm brewing around Mayor Laura Collins and Sidwell in Port Charles. This is one of those nights where a family holiday, a pack of rescued dogs, and a corpse in a trunk all collide to rewrite the lives of several characters at once. Dante's Thanksgiving ultimatum. Thanksgiving at the Falconeri home should have ended with leftovers and laughter, but instead it became the night Dante drew a hard line in the sand between his son and Joe. What began as a harmless, high-energy game of flag football turned into a pretext for Dante to unleash a decision that had clearly been building inside him for a while. He told Rocco he no longer wanted him spending time with Joe, cutting straight through his son's loyalties like a knife. The timing made the blow land even harder. One minute they were acting like a normal family, the next minute Dante was essentially labeling Joe as toxic and unworthy of his son's company, without warning and without offering any real path forward. Underneath that outburst is a man who has seen too much darkness as a cop and as a former WSB operative, and who now projects all of those worst-case scenarios onto his child's friendships. Dante looks at Joe and does not see a kid in over his head. He sees a walking case file trouble with the law, shady connections, and a trail of chaos that could swallow Rocco whole if someone does not step in. The tragedy is that Dandy's protective instinct is real and grounded in genuine fear, but the way he delivers it abrupt, absolute, and framed as an order, not a conversation, turns that fear into a weapon that wounds his son instead of shielding him. In trying to keep Rocco safe from the world, Dante accidentally tells him he does not trust his judgment, and that insult cuts deeper than any punishment. Rocco fights back. Rocco, who has always been portrayed as the determined younger brother with a stubborn moral compass, refuses to accept his father's verdict in silence. Instead of throwing Joe under the bus to save himself, Rocco insists that everything that went wrong was his own decision and that Dante is being unfair by blaming Joe for choices that were not his to control. This is a remarkable moment of growth for Rocco. He is no longer the kid in the background of his parents' drama. He is a teenager staking out his own ethical ground, insisting on accountability while demanding that his friend not be turned into a scapegoat. The argument cracks open something far older and more painful than a disagreement over a friend. It forces Rocco to confront the times his father walked away from him. When he finally throws Dandy's own history in his face, reminding him he has left twice, it is not just teenage anger. It is the sound of years of abandonment, confusion, and quiet hurt finally finding words. Dante is forced to confront the ugliest truth of all. In trying so hard never to be like the father who failed him, he has become the dad who disappears anyway, once for a secret mission, once for PTSD treatment, and now emotionally by refusing to really hear his son. That realization doesn't fix anything immediately, but it visibly rattles Dante, because for the first time he understands Rocco is not just reacting to one bad call, he is reacting to a pattern that has been shaping him his whole life. Sonny's house and the dogs. In the wake of that emotional implosion, Rocco makes a choice that says everything about who he still trusts. He goes straight to Sonny's house and declares he does not want to go back home. For Rocco, Sonny is the adult who has always managed to be brutally honest yet strangely comforting, and he expects sanctuary without judgment. Sonny slips into stern grandfather mode, allowing Rocco to spend the night, but making it crystal clear that running away from your parents is not a real solution, no matter how justified your anger feels in the moment. His message is simple: you can cool off here, but sooner or later, you have to face the people you love, even when they hurt you. Just as the situation seems to be stabilizing, a knock at Sonny's door detonates the fragile calm. Instead of yet another family member, the doorway explodes into chaos as a swarm of dogs of all shapes and sizes barrels into the living room, leashes tangling, paws skidding on the floor, and barking echoing off the walls. Behind the furry stampede stand Joe and Emma, both flushed with adrenaline and pride, announcing that they have just freed these animals from Dalton's secret lab. In their minds, they are heroes writing a new story in Port Charles, teen vigilantes exposing cruelty and saving innocent creatures when no one else would. General Hospital, a long-running ABC soap set in the fictional city of Port Charles, often uses exactly this kind of blend of family conflict, crime, and moral gray areas to drive its drama. The problem is that Joe and Emma's noble intentions are wrapped in layers of criminal behavior, breaking into the lab, removing the animals, and then dragging all of that evidence straight into Sonny Corinthus's home like an invitation for trouble. They chose Sonny's place because they see him as the guy who can handle anything mobster, patriarch, fixer, but what they have really done is drag his grandson directly into the scene of their latest stunt. Ironically, the one place that felt safest to Rocco has just become the worst possible location for him to be seen on a night when the law is already circling Joe like a shark. The legal trapper owned Joe and Rocco. What Joe and Emma do not understand is that, in the eyes of the law, their daring rescue does not automatically read as heroism. It reads as a long list of charges waiting to be filed: trespassing, breaking and entering, theft of property, obstruction, and possibly even tampering with evidence. Once Dalton's crimes are fully exposed, all of it can be packaged together by a determined prosecutor. The moment they brought those dogs to Sonny's house, they inadvertently linked every person under that roof to their mission. And that is where Rocco's situation becomes truly dangerous. Rick, ever the voice of cold legal reality in a town that runs on emotion and impulse, is absolutely right to point out that Joe and Emma have just made Rocco an accessory without even realizing it. If it comes out that Rocco was present when the liberated animals were delivered, the narrative around his existing charges becomes instantly worse. Instead of a kid caught up in one bad chain of events, he starts to look like someone who keeps gravitating toward criminal activity even while waiting for his day in court. The prosecution can argue that Rocco is part of a pattern, not an exception, and judges do not look kindly on defendants who seem incapable of stepping away from trouble, especially when warned directly by a parent like Dante. This twist ramps up Sonny's internal conflict as well. On one hand, he is the grandfather who wants to protect Rocco and the mentor who sees the good heart beating inside Gio's reckless chest. On the other, he is a man who knows how fast law enforcement and his enemies will weaponize any misstep coming from his house to hurt the people he loves. Every dog pacing on that living room floor is a reminder that evidence is literally sitting inside his walls, waiting for someone to knock again. Not with rescued animals this time, but with a warrant, Laura, Sidwell, and power games. While all of this unfolds on the Corinthos side of town, another bomb is about to go off at Laura's door. When she opens it and calmly says she has been expecting the visitor, it is clear she has already put together the pieces that point directly to Sidwell as the mastermind behind Dalton's corpse ending up in her trunk. That quiet confidence is classic Laura. She is not just a mayor on paper, she is a veteran of decades of schemes, betrayals, and mob games in Port Charles. And she recognizes the stink of a power move from a mile away. Sidwell's visit is not a courtesy call. It is a calculated show of force aimed at the newly re-elected mayor, a way of saying, I can put a body in your car and still walk up to your front door like nothing happened. He is likely to lay out a deal dressed up as cooperation, maybe offering information, maybe promising stability while implying that if Laura does not play along, more chaos will follow. The subtext is pure blackmail. Her political capital, her reputation, even the safety of her family are on the line unless she gives Sidwell room to operate in Port Charles. What makes this storyline so potent is how neatly it intersects with Gio's case and the teen's impulsive crusade. Dalton's death, the lab full of abused animals, and the body in Laura's trunk all point to a larger network of corruption that someone like Sidwell might be trying to control, bury, or redirect for his own gain. As these threads tighten, Dandy's Thanksgiving ultimatum starts to look less like a simple overreaction and more like a father sensing the scale of danger surrounding Joe, even if he expressed that fear in the worst possible way. Whether Dante was right to order Rocco to stay away from Joe depends on where you stand. Morally, Rocco is correct that his choices are his own and that loyalty matters. Pragmatically, Dante is not wrong that anyone standing near Joe right now is standing on a legal landmine. The real question is whether this family can find a way to protect Rocco without destroying his trust in the process, just as Port Charles braces for whatever move Sidwell makes next.